This episode is being brought to you by two sponsors. The first being Top Notch Tactics Security Services out of Rowlett, Texas. Top Notch Tactics has supplied the show with two awesome audio mics. Big shout out to those guys. We appreciate them and everything that they do in supporting the podcast. Another way that you can support the podcast is going to Amazon click-through through our website at www.streetwarriorradio.com and click the Amazon link before you do your shopping on Amazon. It's the shopping you were going to do anyway. You're going to buy your girlfriend those flowers. You're going to buy your groceries. Anything you're going to buy on Amazon, you can do it through our website first. Once again, go to streetwarriorradio.com, use the Amazon click-through, and do your shopping. It's quick, it's easy, and it's a great way to support the podcast.
This is Street Warrior Radio episode 004 with your hosts, Big Bo and me, JC. What's going on, Big Bo?
Nothing much, man. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
So I'm loving this new setup we got.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, shout out to our friends over at TNT Security. They really hooked us up. They are thebomb.com. I really do appreciate those guys. I don't think they know how much we appreciate them.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
They're a new security service that's going to be out of Rowlett, Texas, Top Notch Tactics Security Services. I think they heard the last episode and felt really sorry for us. So they decided to send us two really nice mics. We really appreciate those guys. There's going to be more to come on them and their continued support of this podcast and our continued support of them.
Yeah, there definitely were some issues with that episode, unfortunately.
Yeah, you know what?
But it still came out good.
Oh, it still came out.
The content was too good.
And you know what? People said that it wasn't as bad as we made it sound.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard that from 4 or 5 other listeners that, I'm in direct contact with.
All 4 or 5 of them?
All 4 or 5 of them.
That we have?
Remember.
We don't have.
God, episode.
All right.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook.
All right. So, just as a fair warning before we continue with this episode, it's going to be some heavy dark material.
Yeah.
So we're gonna deep down into the darkness of stuff. So with that being said, this is an excerpt from a book by retired LAPD Sergeant Michael Milton. The book is called Cop, A True Story. The death of any innocent person is horrible, but when it happens to a child, the atrocity of the crime is compounded significantly. If you haven't learned the lesson of detachment, and you touch again, you will pay. South Park in Newton Division was a neighborhood that had come back from the 1965 Watts riots. The burned out carcasses of buildings were gone, and a new generation lived there, but make no mistake, this neighborhood was poor, with the same kind of poverty that helped spark the violence in 65. Just north of 52nd Street, between Avalon and San Pedro, were businesses and a few apartment houses that all looked like they came from the same set of plans. I'd worked for other divisions, been promoted, and was now back in Newton as a sergeant. One of my units had a call. The call simply enough, a family dispute with a cutting. Our problem this morning was in Unit 3 on the ground floor of a 2-story apartment house with 4 units on top, 4 units on the bottom. It was fall and still dark out at 5:30 a.m., but the sun was starting to lighten the sky to the east. It's the only time you can fool yourself into thinking that the air really is clean in LA. I pulled up behind the ambulance and another police unit already on scene. There wasn't any activity in the ambulance, so I figured it couldn't be much of a call. Probably a minor family dispute with a small wound. The apartment door was partially open, and I walked into Unit 3. A couple of women were sitting in the front room, not saying much. 2 paramedics and my officers were standing next to a closed door. Sarge, you're not going to fucking believe it. This guy stabbed both of his kids and split. The door's locked, and we're trying to figure out how to open it. I accidentally pulled the door shut, and it locked from the inside. A slightly embarrassed firefighter volunteered. Where are the kids? I asked. They're inside, Sarge. Well, kick the fucking door open. What are you waiting for? Bang! The door was open with a single well-placed kick from one of my officers. I knew as we stood in the hallway waiting for the door to open that a horrible sight would be unveiled. There were 2 beds in the room, with clothes strewn about from the partially open dresser drawers. A sliding closet door, also slightly open, revealed a mess typical of 2 young children sharing the same room. Nothing in its place, clothes thrown around, punctuated with a toy here and there, but no pictures on the walls, no pennants, no bright posters of cartoon characters, none of that. As I looked into that room, my worst fears were not realized. They were vastly exceeded. A little girl was lying on her back in her flannel nightgown, resting in a pool of her own blood. Her throat had been slit, causing her to bleed to death while choking on her own blood. Her face looked so peaceful, belying her violent death. She appeared to be only sleeping, but she was dead. On the floor, her 2-year-old brother was moving. He was trying to get away and hide beneath the bed. His throat, too, had been slit, and he was sliding in his own blood. The sticky, sweet smell of it permeated the air the way it always does in close spaces where humans bleed to death. I reached down, picked him up, and cradled him, as you might hold any small baby, but it was as if his neck was hinged. His head flopped backward, revealing a gash halfway through his throat, making his windpipe clearly visible. I immediately snapped his head forward to close the wound. It was frightening because blood wasn't going everywhere the way it should have. He wasn't breathing, not even trying. The paramedics quickly came over. I tightened my arms around him, holding him close to me. He didn't cry. He couldn't. He was moving ever so slightly, the kind of movement that gives you hope. Sarge, he's finished. He's dead. No mistaking the air of finality in the paramedic's voice. And one of the few times I ever lost my temper, I screamed in his face, "He's not fucking dead till I say he's fucking dead, got it?" "Okay, Sarge, we'll try. He seemed shocked by the tone of my voice, but he and his partner started to work on the child again. I opened his neck, and the paramedics carefully threaded an oxygen tube down that small windpipe. No need to go through this little one's mouth because a direct path had been established by the bread knife lying on the floor next to us. Together, the 3 of us ran into the ambulance. Finally, I relinquished the little boy to one of the paramedics, who held him just as tenderly. By now, a crowd of neighbors had gathered in the cool dawn. I guess they were like us. They had hope in their eyes. No one spoke, only silence. The kind of silence that means you're afraid to speak because you'll jinx it. The doors to the ambulance slammed shut, and the race north to Metropolitan Hospital began. It wasn't going to turn out right. The little boy didn't make it. I already knew that as I returned to Unit 3. The paramedics were right, and I was wrong. We still had a crime to investigate, a suspect to catch, evidence to secure, notifications to make, witnesses to interview. Inside the room of death, I stood by myself in the company of only the little murdered girl lying on her bed. I looked at her, and I couldn't stop my sobs. I cried, for the only time in my 21-year police career. It just wasn't fair the way things were turning out. Those kids didn't have a chance. It wasn't right. And it wasn't going to be right. Not that morning, maybe not ever. A family dispute has started, probably over something very simple. I don't really know. The husband was a PCP dealer, and his wife told us later that in her anger she had flushed a bottle of that drug down the toilet. To punish her, the husband had brought each of their children out, and in front of their mother, run a 10-inch bread knife across each of their throats. They must have looked up at him, trusting their father implicitly, and he returned their trust with death. He took the little girl back to her bed to die, but the little boy he threw down on the bedroom floor like trash that no one had any further use for, just as he did with the bread knife, and then he ran. On the table was a family album filled with photographs. I asked the wife to remove all the photos of her husband. Taking the pictures outside, I asked the neighbors to help us find the man who had murdered his children. There was no hint of the usual attitude of move on down the sidewalk, get back, there's nothing going on here this time. We needed their help. And help us they would. We wanted this guy, and we wanted him real bad. The neighbors did too. Every person standing there took a picture and fanned out through the area. By now, 2 additional police units were there, and we checked the immediate vicinity of the apartment house. It seemed like only a few minutes before a young man came running back, so out of breath that he couldn't talk. He pointed down the street and I asked, "Is he over there?" He nodded. Officers and neighbors together began running down the street following the youthful messenger. We turned the corner and 2 houses down on the left, the boy stopped. Out stepped the suspect. He was so easy to identify. Having seen several photographs of him, I knew he was the killer. My gun was drawn. "Keep your hands out where we can see them. Come here slowly, down the steps. Come on, keep your hands up. You can kill me, motherfucker, 'cause I ain't going." I reholstered my weapon and told the officers to cover me as I went up the steps after him. Reaching him, I grabbed the murderer and extended my left leg as he went past me. He tripped and fell face first down the steps and onto the sidewalk. He tried to get to his feet to flee, and the fight was on. I seized him from behind and applied a chokehold harder than I ever had done. The absolute rage I felt blinded me. At that moment, I really think I could have beaten him to death. It felt good having my arm around his neck, bringing him to his knees. "Sarge, let go of him, let go of him," yelled a detective who had responded to the scene from headquarters. I thought it meant I choked the father to death, so I let go. But the detective wanted his turn. He stepped up and booted the man in the face harder than I've ever seen anyone kick. The detective had just wanted to vent his own anger before I was finished. Then he shouted, "Get that motherfucker, Sarge." I resumed the chokehold until the man was unconscious. It was with great satisfaction that I rolled him over on his stomach and slapped handcuffs on him. He regained consciousness almost immediately, so we stood him up and began walking down the street towards the police cars. An elderly man who had watched the excitement unfold said to the person next to him, "See, I told you, just stay back. They know how to kick ass." Later, at the hospital, the detective approached me. "Hey, Sarge, do you think we'll get in trouble for whipping that guy?" "Fuck no, not the way he was fighting, and the way I'm writing it up in my log. I wanted to retaliate for the little children who couldn't fight for themselves. Too bad he wasn't seriously injured. I don't know if that was police brutality, and I don't really care. I never felt for a second of remorse for choking that guy or the kick delivered by the detective. I don't care what others think about what we did. They didn't hold that little boy. If he had given up initially, there would have been no fight, no matter how much I wanted it. It's hard to describe just how good it felt to choke him out cold, to even the score for those children in some small way." The suspect was tried for 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. Special circumstances cases may lead to the death penalty or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. After the preliminary hearing, we lost special circumstances. The wife didn't turn out to be nearly as good as witness as the case needed. She changed her tune and began to support her husband's actions, saying it was her fault because she had angered him. Maybe it was because of all the evidence pointed to the fact that she sold dust, along with her husband, and she valued the family business more than her children's lives. On one of her visits to her husband prior to the preliminary hearing, her conversation was recorded. A detective handling the case relayed part of that exchange to me. She and her husband were calmly discussing the murder of the 2 children when she said to him, "It ain't no thing. We can make more babies." For some months following the murders, I had a reoccurring dream. Each time we'd be in the apartment house, and all the dialogue would be the same. We'd kick the door just as we had done that morning, only this time, my twin daughters, who were about the same age as the murdered boy, would be lying dead in the room. Coincidentally, around this time, there was an experimental program whereby the police department employed station house shrinks. These psychologists would work with police officers and citizens in the station or on the street. The doctor assigned to Newton Street was Ryan Gray. He really understood police work and the pressures placed on police officers. As a sergeant, you were charged with escorting Dr. Gray when he worked your shift. One night I decided it was time to talk. "Dr. Gray, I've got a question for you. Not as sergeant, but as Mike Milton, patient." I told him about my dreams. "How do you feel about it?" "I don't want to have them anymore. I'm tired of it, and I don't understand why now, after almost 20 years on the job, something like this is affecting me." "You've seen a lot, Mike, but you violated the rules this time. You touched, and when you touch, the shield you use to protect yourself comes down." He then advised me on how I should attack this situation. He told me to welcome remembrances of that terrible morning. What's worse, he asked, thinking about what happened or what actually happened? If what actually happened is worse, then thinking about it is going to help. The mind can cleanse itself, but you've got to help it. He was right. That day, before I went to sleep, I thought about everything that had happened in minute detail. I let the memories wash over me without rejecting them. Finally, I fell asleep. Really asleep. I never had those dreams again, but I'll always remember what caused them. Death is an integral part of violent inner-city police work. Loss of lives, or saving lives, is the most important thing that happens. Regardless of which way it goes, there is always a reminder that it could be you that's dying, or you whose life others are frantically racing to save. Death is a dirty part of the police business, and you hope it won't rub off on you. You become inured to its real impact and significance. By the end of your career, death doesn't mean much anymore, except you're glad it wasn't you. So,
well, I didn't know he was going to start out that heavy.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, pretty heavy. But the reason that I read that was because we're going to be talking about trauma, and PTSD, and kind of how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So, in experiencing trauma and in experiencing the bad things that we can experience in our job, in particular, and anybody out there has, bad things that have happened to them, has had death in the family, they've seen something horrible, they've been in something horrible, car accident, or something has happened to them. In trying to understand it and trying to process it, I think that one thing that you have to do proactively to keep yourself kind of balanced before something like that may or may not happen to you or happens to somebody else is understanding the dark side of life, understanding that bad things happen, understanding that, people die, people get hurt, and kind of exploring, and I know this is important, at least in our job, at least I believe it is when you deal with situations where, for instance, Sergeant Milton, comes across this grisly murder scene, and there's children, and he's got children, and he later has dreams where he sees his own twins.
Yeah. This is a different era of policing too. This is not modern day policing. This is definitely a different time of policing.
It's a different era, but he'd become so accustomed to the dark side of the job,
as we all do,
that I think my interpretation is he kind of forgot what it was like to feel something for these people and what happens, because you go to these things, you see dead people or whatever, and you detach yourself. And people from the outside may not understand this, but when you have a group of first responders on a death scene or a murder or a bad car accident, in order to keep ourselves from absolutely just breaking down or processing this horrible thing that's in front of us, we'll make jokes, we'll ask where we're going to eat, we'll do things like that, and it's a deflective measure.
Someone standing on the outside will see that as we don't care, we're heartless. But if we literally see the darkest hour of people. Sure, we don't always see Aunt May pickling pickles.
No, and our I think people, like, and depending on the type of environment that you work in as a first responder, you may work in Mayberry, you may work in downtown Chicago or the south side of LA or whatever. It doesn't matter. For a lot of people, I think they're oblivious to what their fellow man is capable of.
Yes, people are sick.
and
people are very sick.
And that there are people out there, I don't think you think of it when you look at a cop or a firefighter or a paramedic or anything like that, where you look at those people, and I don't think the first thing you think is, God, I can imagine what that guy's seen. I can't imagine what that guy's experienced. And And oftentimes, and I mentioned this in the first episode when I was talking about what a street warrior is. We have seen literally the absolute worst of human life.
Yeah.
And the absolute best of human life. And sometimes that is in the same 12-hour shift.
Yo, yes.
Now imagine.
Very much so.
Imagine going to a horrible, sad suicide or a car accident where a child was killed and you're not just like, you didn't just hear about it. You're seeing these things. You're seeing the dead bodies. You're seeing the mangled flesh. You're seeing
You're smelling it.
You're smelling it. It's in the air. It's touching you. You may even be having to assist the medical examiner in picking up body parts. I've done that before. And you're just trying to detach yourself from that. So you don't sit there and go, I'm holding a piece of a human being that just got shredded.
I found a hand.
And it's just like, you have to do something as a deflective. But there's a back end to that, right? There's a back end to that. And that's the darkness. That's the evil side of human life.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with these traumatic incidents, when you're dealing with either trauma to you, to your partner, to your friend, to your, family member, whatever, it doesn't matter. In my opinion, the way to deal with it, the way to at least have a foundation there so that you can deal with stuff like that is to understand the evil side of life, the dark things that go on in life, the dark thoughts that you have in your head. Not everybody runs around and it's, unicorns and rainbows and stuff in their head.
No.
People at times, very, very, very normal people, have some weird, sick thoughts sometimes.
Yeah.
And understanding where it comes from, right, I think helps with dealing with, trauma and dealing with bad things that happen.
Yeah, and I just, most people just don't understand. It takes only 1% of the population does police work, and only 1% of the population in the U.S. does military work, and that's because it takes a special person to deal with the darkness of man. Like, you're seeing people that are just, 1, either strung out on drugs, 2, just aren't good people, or 3, have just hit rock bottom, and they're either doing bad stuff or they're just put in a bad situation. Like, you have vice detectives who deal with prostitutes, and most people are just like, oh, they're scumbags, they're sleaze. Those are girls who had something happen to them.
Absolutely.
Who are living. No girl wakes up when she's 13 and says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go be a prostitute.
Right.
I'm going to go sell my body.
Mm-hmm.
And they're dealing with that. They're dealing with dudes who are paying for this, who are paying for the services of a girl who is mentally and physically and emotionally dark. She goes to her own dark place to deal with what she's going through in life. And you have these vice detectives and you have these undercovers who are not only just trying to help these girls, part of the helping them is arresting them and getting them out of the situation that they're in.
Right.
You know what I mean? And sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes arresting somebody to get them out of the situation they're in.
Sometimes.
And seeking some help. Most of those girls who are prostitutes have been either raped, molested, on drugs.
Yep.
They're there for a reason.
And a lot of them are trafficked.
Yeah. And that's the dark side of man. It's every little thing. I mean, we don't just deal with hey, you were going 30 and a 25.
Yeah, or your neighbor's dogs have been barking for, 9 hours. 9 hours. Supposedly.
Allegedly. We don't just deal with that. I mean, we deal with some pretty sick stuff, man.
Yeah, and it's hard to go from something that's horrible like that and then go to that barking dog complaint and have to have a smile on your face and, hey, how can I help you?
Yep.
And it's hard to do that. And yeah, it does take a special type of person, I think, to do the job. But, that being said, you're still a human being.
Oh yeah, at the end of the day.
I think there's an extremely small percentage that can actually just like look at that stuff and be like, okay, whatever, right? I think that most people, myself included, with all the things that I've seen, you kind of process it, you detach, but there are things that stick with you. There's things that bother you, things you think about, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But I mean, there's things that, you've got to suppress that as a police officer, as a firefighter, or a medic or whatever, is having to jump call to call to call, and you're going from everywhere from a suicide to a horrible family violence assault to a sexual assault to who knows, maybe a sexual assault of a child, to a horrible car accident, to a simple fender bender where you have people yelling at each other, and you're supposed to show up and you're supposed to be Mr. Calm, Mr. Cool, Mr. Collected, and 99.9% of first responders do it.
Oh, yeah.
But it comes at a price.
Yep.
It comes at a price. It comes at a price later on.
And then let's just say, me and you work 12-hour shifts. Start of your shift, sexual assault of a child, assault, family violence. You're doing the paperwork all night on those. You get a DWI, so you're dealing with someone who's combative and possibly drunk. So at the end of that night, you've had 3 really emotional calls for yourself, mental calls that have exhausted your brain. Now you have to go home and you have to be a husband.
And this is after hours of paperwork.
Yeah, you have to go home and be a husband or a father or a son or a brother. You have to be quasi-normal. What do you think most people can expect from a traumatic event like that? Like mentally, what can they expect?
Well, I can go off my experiences and what I've seen from other people. And we're in no way licensed counselors or anything.
Not at all. Please don't take this
although we play the role sometimes on the street.
Oh, yeah.
But
I've counseled couples before.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, what we've become, this kind of catch-all of everything. But there's a lot of there's some basic things. You're gonna have this lingering feeling in the back of your head that it's almost a feeling of guilt, like you could have changed the outcome, right?
Okay.
And eventually come to realize, no, I mean, it was out of your control. But you're gonna have, it's gonna occupy your thoughts. It's gonna bring you down. It can bring you depression, right? That's one thing you can expect from it. Dreams are another big one. Dreams are something I've experienced.
Yeah.
Reoccurring dreams are the same thing, but sometimes, as even Sergeant Middleton states in his book, where he talks about, he keeps going in the room, but it's his daughters. It's not the kids that were actually killed. And sometimes you'll insert things that you personally have in your life. You'll insert those into the place of the horrible event or the person that was killed or whatever. You'll look at that and you'll see yourself or you'll see your family members or whatever, and it adds this extra layer of fear and anger and guilt and sadness and it can really mess with you. It can really, really mess with you, especially if you don't have any, or you don't seek any avenues to deal with it. And one of the things that another thing that you'll experience, or at least for my own situations, is detachment from your family, detachment from your friends.
Oh yeah.
You kind of shut down.
I think I see that the most with I think state troopers. When it comes to them, like there's a stigma with them, and I think it's because they deal with just mostly traffic. They're Department of Public
highway
Safety.
related. Yeah.
And they see a lot of just death.
Sure. Yeah, they work a lot of accidents.
They work a lot of accidents. Yeah, they see kids die, old people die, young people die, black, white, everything. Mm-hmm. They see a lot of death for a human, and when you see troopers that have been on the job for so long, they're like checked out.
Right.
Just like the way that their personality is like almost cold.
Sometimes, yeah.
It's just not, like most cops, we're jokey and we're fun. But like them, they're just like business. Straight to the point business.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that you see with people that have had traumatic events, especially in this line of work, is anger.
Mm-hmm.
Because we see, and just like, Sergeant Middleton talked about, he was so angry and he wanted to choke that dude out.
He wanted to kill that dude.
Yeah,
he wanted to kill that dude.
He wanted to choke him out just to get retribution for those dead kids.
Right.
And I think that that's what a lot of officers do sometimes, subconsciously, not even knowing it.
Yeah.
That they see the suspect that they hate in another suspect, and it brings back all those memories subconsciously.
Yeah, sure.
It brings it all back. And so that's when you have people that can make the wrong choice. They can make the wrong move,
sure,
and do something that could be a career ender.
And it takes, it can be a life ender. You go to jail, depending on how far you took it. And it takes an extreme amount of self-control.
Oh yeah,
and that's hard. Think about, let's say you're responding to a sexual assault of a child.
Yeah.
Right. And the suspect's still there.
Man, Man,
and
that's tough.
here's this dude in front of you. You're a father.
Yeah.
I'm a father. You imagine if somebody did that to your own children,
Oh, yeah,
like
for
how
sure.
just how enraged you would be.
You'd
you
go
know,
ballistic.
and it's hard not to like step into that role and
Oh,
go,
yeah.
no, I'm about to take care of business here.
Yeah,
this dude, the jail's not good enough for this.
And then
person.
you know what's so crazy is you have detectives who deal with these crimes, who have to go in there sometimes and play a role and be just as sick as that person.
Yep.
So she had on shorts. Oh, she was 17. Oh, she was asking for it.
Yeah.
She was asking for it.
Right.
And it's just like that guy feels comfortable with them and starts spilling his guts.
Right.
And that's what you need sometimes for an arrest. Like, can you imagine the role that he has to play in his mind to be that sick?
Well, and that comes down to understanding the darkness. I mean, understanding the sick part of the human brain and being able to put yourself in that position in a simulation role without actually being that person. I mean, think about people that hunt child porn predators.
Golly.
I mean,
and the child porn, and you know,
they have
what a lot of people don't know is those detectives are the people that work for Micknick. They have to see kiddie porn.
Yeah, they have to watch it.
They have to watch it to see who the kid in the porn is.
Right, because
to try to identify that person
and the suspect.
Yes,
the location.
Yep.
You know, I
couldn't imagine watching it.
It's a job I couldn't do.
It's just like I couldn't be a state trooper. Like my uncle was a state trooper. He was like, nephew, why don't you do this? And I was like, to be real with you, I see how you are after 17 years, and you hearing some of the stories you've told me. There's no way I want to see some 4-year-old kid with his head chopped off.
Well, and there's a lot of big city cops like that.
Yeah,
you know that do 20 plus years on the street in patrol. And they are hardened dudes. I mean, they are hard dudes. And because they've been inundated with terror. I mean, horror. I mean, it's just the nasty part of human.
And it's the same thing with military veterans.
The same, yeah, exactly. Sure, absolutely.
And people don't understand that with military veterans. You had a generation that was lost with the Vietnam War, because they had to do some horrible, horrendous things. And these are kids, man, 18 to 25-year-olds going to war, fighting for their country and coming back and their country hating them for that.
Right.
And it's like, they didn't go sign up.
A lot of them are drafted, yeah.
85% of those dudes were straight up drafted.
Yeah.
And they're trying to stay alive. And, they had to do some horrible things, man. If a kid's coming at you 10 years old and he's got an AK and he's shooting at you and you want to go home,
right? You
got to kill a kid.
Right, sure.
And these people, you're coming back and everyone's like, you're a child murderer. And it's like, you can win.
No. And you know what? It's actually an interesting, it's kind of interesting because when they experience that and police experience that today.
Oh, yeah.
You have young kids. I say young, but I mean, 12, 13, 14.
Let's just say Southside Chicago.
Yeah.
What they're dealing with. Those are young kids out there, man. Those are 14 to 17, I think, is the average gang member age out there.
Murdering other people. And if
straight up.
If one of those dudes comes at a cop with a gun.
Oh, yeah.
That cop can't just go,
you're 14.
You're 14, I'm not going to shoot you.
Yep.
They have to make a decision whether they're going to die and leave their family.
Yep.
Or they're going to save the public and maintain public safety and save their fellow officers and save themselves and put that person down.
And just imagine, if, whoever's listening to this, if you work a normal job, you're not a first responder of any kind, just imagine, what you would do if
put yourself in those shoes.
A 14-year-old kid broke into your house tonight and he's going to kill you and your wife and you have a gun. Are you gonna let him kill you and your wife, or are you gonna kill a 14-year-old?
Because he's just a kid.
It's crazy, man, and that's what we're talking about with the darkness. There is literally a dark side of humanity that we deal with, and in turn, it turns you. You have to go into that darkness.
You have to understand it.
And I think one of the best ways to come out of it is like that counselor talk with the sergeant in the book. You've got to talk about it. You have to bring it to the forefront of your life.
Well, it's with anything.
Yeah, with anything traumatic.
Communication is the lifesaver. It's the number one lifesaver. Communication saves the day. Because you can try to process what's going on your own. It's not going to work.
No, you're not equipped for it. Unless you've been to school for something like that.
Maybe not even then. I mean, it just depends. It depends on how you personally react. Everybody's different. I mean, everybody processes stuff different. But if I see something that, at work that's like really bothering me, right? And I come to you or my wife or whatever, and I say, hey, I got to talk about this. I got to get this off my chest.
Yeah.
And you can talk yourself through it and feel better. You're still going to have lingering effects, of course. You're still going to have thoughts, maybe dreams, that kind of stuff. But you got to keep talking.
Yeah, you have to continue to talk that stuff out, man. You've got to get... The only way you're going to forget... You're not going to ever forget about it, but the only way that it's going to work itself out of your brain and stop festering is when you talk about it.
Well, the talking about it can literally save your life.
Yeah.
Right? I mean... You've got, let's just put it this way, police suicides in 2017.
Oh.
And I'm not going to say a number because I'm not 100% sure, but it's been a consistent yearly basis. But in 2017, for sure, police suicides were more than line of duty deaths.
Wow.
And a lot of those guys suffered through a series of traumatic events that they didn't talk about, they didn't deal with,
Yeah, so then, you're dealing with all the stuff that goes on at your job.
Right.
And then you have to come home and you're not talking about it with your significant other.
Because you don't want to bring work home.
Because you don't want to bring work home.
Right.
And you're holding that in, and subconsciously, you're taking it out on that person.
Sure.
And they can't deal with it. And then as a person who hasn't talked to anybody about it, you're holding it in. Your significant other is about to leave you. Everything seems like it's just crumbling in. That seems like an option on the table. As I'm just going to take my own life.
Yeah.
I can't deal with this. And that's falling.
Well, everybody's left me anyway.
That's falling too much. That's really falling into the darkness. The only light that's going to be shown on your problems is the light you bring to it.
Sure.
Is when you bring that problem to the light.
Yeah. And the way to do that is by talking.
Yeah. Hey, I saw this. It's really tearing me up. And I think a lot of places that a lot of police departments, fire departments, EMS, all that stuff, I don't think that they have enough resources out there. So like the military.
Agreed, 100%.
The military has so many outlets, man. So many outlets. I mean, they have hotlines you can call if you're feeling that way. And I've never seen that for police officers. I'm sure they're out there, but it's never just like on the patrol table in your PD. It's never on the wall. In the military, every time you go somewhere, you can see, hey, if you're having a problem, call here. When you go to sick call because you have the flu, have you thought about killing yourself today? They're constantly asking you that question. I mean, they give you a card. Well, call this number.
When you take people to jail, that's one of the first questions they ask them.
You think about killing yourself today?
Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
This dude that just raped this child that you're taking to jail, that you had to exercise every self-restraint to not tear his ass up.
You have to ask him now. Hey, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, how are you feeling, bud? You thought about killing yourself lately?
But no one at the end of your shift says, hey, JC, you all right?
Yeah.
You feeling like hurting yourself? Mm-hmm. Feeling like hurting? And they even ask you, are you feeling like hurting yourself or somebody else? When you go to jail, they ask military people that when you go to get a flu shot, you feeling like killing yourself or anybody else? Nope. But no one asks that at the end of a traumatic shift. Right. Are you okay? Do you feel like hurting yourself and or others?
Sure.
And I think that's one way that leadership is failing in that department.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that it's their fault necessarily. It's just the way it's been passed down in law enforcement. And the stigma that talking about it and communicating about it has on it. And it's that way with the military, and the military is just now getting around that stigma.
Sure. Yeah.
But that stigma's still in law enforcement. Like, if you talk about that, you're weak.
Right.
If you talk about that, how can we trust you on the streets to
even
deal with
you're
that
a liability.
stuff anymore? You're a liability.
Right.
No, man, I'm human.
Yeah.
I'm not a robot.
Yeah, stuff gets to you. I mean,
stuff gets to everybody. And that was, one of the biggest things with the stigma. That's why you have a lot of homeless Vietnam veterans, because no one asked them that question. And it's a little bit better with the OIF, OEF crew that's out there. they have a lot more resources
right.
at their disposal, especially through the VA and the way it's starting to get funded and has the ball rolling behind it. But you just don't have it with police, and no one in leadership was ever trained that.
Sure.
So they don't even know. But they're definitely failing in the 21st century about that.
Yeah, and I think the time for excuses with that is coming to an end.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think that it's prevalent enough now, especially with the broad understanding of PTSD, and especially in the last 15, 20 years, how much more we understand.
The last 5 years.
Yeah, sure. That we understand about post-traumatic stress and understand about how traumatic events affect the brain, affect the body, affect the psyche.
It chokes the brain.
Yeah, it chokes your whole life. And, and I know for a fact that, all those, leadership publications that go out to chiefs of police and all that, a lot of them touch on that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of mainstream police publications that are read and circulated also touch on dealing with that kind of stuff. But you have a failure to action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a disconnect.
A huge, and it comes with this taboo of it. It's like, if you have an officer commit suicide, a lot of these departments, they don't talk about it.
They don't even do a funeral for that guy.
Not a police funeral.
Nope.
You may have some honors, like their fellow officers, like, no,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to honor this dude.
Yeah.
But you're not talking about department sanctioned, and I know of a space. I went to one, a friend of mine who committed suicide.
Yep.
And his department, we put on a funeral for him, and we had my last department, the first department that he worked for, was there, and then the current department that he was at the time. One car, 4 officers, and they stood against the wall and acted like they're embarrassed to be there.
There's a real ugly stigma that comes with that for our line of work.
It bothered me.
Oh, it bothers me too.
It bothered me at the time, and it still bothers me. But
because we're supposed to be brothers.
Exactly.
We're supposed to be a family.
They're supposed to be exactly. We're supposed to be a family, right? But we're failing our family members because we're not getting out there. I try to. And I know you've seen this, and we've had these conversations on the street.
Yeah.
Especially in being a trainer and all that kind of stuff, where you're bringing new people in, and when something happens, you got to stop and talk about it for a second, do a little debrief, do a little after action. Say, hey, how'd you feel about that? Talk about it for a minute. Pull over. Take the time to do it.
Take the time to do that.
Take the time. The leadership is not going to, for the most part, I'm sure there's some great leaders out there in law enforcement that actually step up in this area.
Yeah.
But I think by and large, you don't have that.
No.
And
what's crazy is some departments and leaderships will look at your video to see if you violated a general order, but won't look at your video to see if you went through a traumatic event.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh man, he was on that sexual assault call. Let's see if I can look at this video to see if he messed up anything.
Sure.
Not, oh man, he was through a traumatic event and he handled it himself very well. He fought through all that and put all his personal feelings aside. I'm going to bring him in.
Right.
And just to touch base and make sure he's okay with that.
I like the, dealing with a traumatic call, and then, the after of that where you got to do your paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And let's say through everything, with all the thoughts in your head, everything going on, you missed a step.
Yeah.
You didn't fill out this form, or you filled it out incorrectly, you forgot to sign or whatever. And it's get called in the office and bitched out about fixing this, not, hey, that was a pretty rough scene, yeah? Yeah, it was. All right. Hey, just let you know, after you did that, or after that call was done, you got your paperwork done, all that stuff, it looks like you forgot to do this. Can you get that done for me?
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
No problem. Hey, are you okay from that?
Yeah.
Obviously
that was it messed you up. Because you normally don't forget stuff like this.
Right. Obviously, there was something there. It was a rough call. Are you good? Do you need to talk about it? If you need to, let's talk about it. I'm here. I've been through it before. I know.
If you don't feel like talking to me, is there somebody you want to talk to?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so...
it seems so elementary, like...
Oh, yeah. Just talking about it, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback the whole situation.
It's not even Monday morning quarterbacking, I think. I think it's simple common sense. You're talking about leadership taking care of its people.
But if leadership's never had that leadership, it's a
cycle. I get it.
I had a supervisor tell me that in the military. He's like, you can't blame them. No one's ever taught them. So, I mean, I definitely agree with that in some sense. You know, they don't know, but I definitely agree with you too that they have been at least exposed to it. They've at least been exposed to knowing about it. But since we have such an ugly stigma on it, no one wants to talk about it.
Right.
And so how do you deal with that in your family life when your family doesn't understand?
And that's hard.
That's hard.
Hard.
You know, no one wants to go home and tell their boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, just saw 3 kids get murdered. Like, so,
right.
Dude, Sergeant Milton can't go home and tell his wife.
In detail.
In detail.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
The only thing he can really say, you know, without relapse in that event is, man, really went to a tough call. Some kids died today.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't want to tell he doesn't want to put that thought into his wife's head. You know, hey, dust head took a bread knife to his kids' throats.
Yeah.
You know, no one wants to do that.
Because wife threw away their stash.
Yeah.
Oh, and now she's cool with it.
Yeah, they can make more babies.
I mean,
come on, man.
First of all, how do you as the person dealing with it reconcile that? Yeah. But then how do you expect your spouse, especially if they're not involved in law enforcement or they're not involved in those sorts of things, how do you expect them to understand that? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But the thing is that you can easily fall into the trap of, well, you know, I can't talk about it at home. So then you start getting moody. You start lashing out. You start doing it. It's on a lot of it's on a subconscious level.
Me.
Yeah,
you don't get it.
And
you don't know what I'm going through.
And the relationship starts breaking down and all that. And
that's why cops go through so many. It's why cops have divorces.
A lot.
And I mean, even cops married to cops is a high divorce rate.
Sure.
You know, it's because we don't talk about the situations.
Right.
You know, it's very hard for us to. There's that level of machismo or macho-ness that goes with this job.
The taboo of it.
Yeah. I can't talk about it.
Right.
You know? And that's
sometimes
that's the best thing. But then you have those significant others who are like, I don't want to hear about that.
Oh, yeah, they're forceful with it. They're like, I don't want to hear about that.
I don't want to hear about that.
Don't bring that home.
Don't bring that. Leave that at work.
Yeah.
Work is work.
Yeah.
Well, that's my life.
Okay. Well, here's the deal, sweetheart. Right? I don't know what to do right now. I am messed up.
Yeah.
And it's not like I had a bad board meeting today.
Right? Richard wasn't just late today.
Yeah. Richard wasn't only being a prick today.
Yeah.
He gave me cold coffee. You know what I mean? My day was ruined. Okay.
You're stupid.
And
you're stupid.
And it's hard, but it's hard.
He didn't just bring me cold coffee today.
But it's hard. He got my Starbucks wrong.
First world problems.
Motherfucker. So but it's hard. It's hard for you as the receiving end of that. You know, after dealing with all that crap, it's hard for you to go, wait a minute. Yeah. Are you serious right now?
Yep.
You know, are you really like talking to me like that after
me and you are lucky.
Yes, very.
Your wife is in the field. My girlfriend has been in the law enforcement field. They've been around it. So we can easily go and talk to them and be like, dude slit his kid's throat with a bread cutter. And they'll be like, what?
Yeah.
Why? Girlfriend threw a stash. Are you fucking serious? And that helps.
It helps, yeah.
So much. Because they feel the emotion you feel.
Right, but they'll also ask, are you okay?
Yeah. Well, are you all right? I mean, did you at least catch him? Talk to me. Let me know.
I've literally come home. I've literally come home and woken my wife up and started crying. Yeah. Because of things that happened during the shift, you know. And she just goes straight into, you know, hey, it's okay. You know, and comforting. Mama bear mode, right? Because she gets it. And I understand that, again, we're very lucky.
Yeah, we are.
Not everyone has that.
No.
And, you know, like, you know, my wife has been a dispatcher, you know, for a long, and it currently is. But, you know, and she, you know, their job, I would never want their job.
Heck no.
I give all the props in the world to dispatchers.
Their job is almost as bad as ours. Cause
seriously, but with them, for me anyway, in my head, it comes down to, I've got to hear all that crap on the phone, and I can't help you other than to send people your way.
Yep.
but I can't physically jump through this phone and save you as you're being murdered on the phone. I'm having to listen to that. And sometimes listening to it and not seeing it, but it's just the sounds.
Because when we show up, that person's dead. They had to listen to that person die.
Exactly.
That's tough.
Yeah. I mean, and I just God bless them. I mean, seriously, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that job.
No, there's no way.
I'd end up going
and then you have the
crazy.
people who are screaming at them on the phone, just you stupid son of a bitch.
All day long, just the abuse. It's just like
the abuse they get.
And we get it. We get it too, right?
Yeah.
But we can. But we're there.
I've even shown up to calls and they'll be like, that dispatcher was rude as fuck. Fuck that bitch. And you're just like, yup, she's crazy. What can I do for you? Because you want to be on their good side already.
I see how this is going.
I see how this is going. She got upset at the dispatcher.
But if they turn that on you, well, you can shut that down.
You can shut that down.
Because you're there.
Yeah.
Right. But it's just, I don't know, man. It's anyway. We're lucky because we have that, and but a lot of people don't. A lot of cops. I don't know what it is about cops and teachers and nurses and all that stuff, but there's a lot of cops married to teachers and nurses and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of them don't. I mean, nurses would understand, especially if they work in like a hospital or whatever, they get it.
Yeah, some of them will. I'll say some of them will.
But trauma nurses are certainly going to understand.
Yeah, certainly.
But you're
ER nurses for sure.
But your regular stay-at-home housewife / mom, or your regular just administrative assistant, or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're kind of run-of-the-mill normal jobs. They're not going to have that understanding.
No.
And if you're getting and if you're right though, if you're getting that kickback, that bring that here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
where do you want me to bring it?
She's probably reacting that way. I'm gonna be on the how do you say it?
Devil's advocate.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here and just assume that she's being that way because she doesn't want to hear that. She doesn't want that in her life. She doesn't want that in her brain. Not that she's just a shitty person.
I don't even know if I wasn't doing this job if I'd want to hear that shit.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That's some sick stuff that we go through, man.
A lot of it, yeah. And so at that point, the where I think leadership comes in to your law enforcement leadership is getting over that little taboo, that little, oh my God, it's such a stigma.
Yeah, it's
providing,
you're gonna kill yourself,
right? Oh, we need to pull him from the street.
He's dangerous. He's a danger to himself and or others.
Yeah. Instead of getting him help, he's out of a job.
So if your administration's failing you, and they're not getting you the help you need, your wife's not helping you, or your significant other. I always say wife. I'm sorry. I'm a dude, so I always just.
You're good.
It's a wife. I don't want to assume anyone's gender. Where can you go to get the help? And to me, it falls on you.
At the end of the day, it does fall on you. You have to make the decision. Yeah.
You have to make a decision what you're going to do, because suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? Everybody hears that. That's like one of my favorite sayings with suicide because it's so true.
It is true. The only person you're ending the pain for is yourself. Yep. Because you're causing massive amounts of pain for everyone around you.
You have to seek the help. You have to know that something's going on with you, and
Sure,
man. Everyone's telling me I've been a dick at work.
Mm-hmm.
My relationship's falling apart. I need to go and talk to somebody.
Right.
Whether it's you in the locker room, your buddy in the locker room, or it's professional help. I prefer professional help if things are getting that bad for you.
Right.
There are places you can call that will give you 1 hour free sessions.
Yeah, sure.
And then they will, after your free session with that one person, they'll direct you to another session with another person for a free hour and send them the notes.
Right.
So it's not like you're just retelling the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
You can keep going. There are places out there for people because they want to help you.
There are places out there that specifically deal with first responders too.
Yeah.
There's a place in Dallas that does. In Dallas, Texas. I'm sure that, there's probably every major city has something.
Oh, yeah.
Probably, right? But if you're getting to that point where you're just like, I need some help, but it's not around me, right? There's
churches.
There are organizations out there like Blue Help that deal with law enforcement suicide and getting people resources.
Yeah.
I mean, a simple. It seems so. Back in the day, where it was like, call
Back in the day.
Back in
my days.
You call, 1-800,
Yeah, 1-800 help me.
Sure. But nowadays it's like, you can go Google it. I mean, it's simple as that. I mean, it's simple Google search. I mean,
you have everything at our fingertips.
I mean, our phone. I mean, you can just get on there and look. I mean, but one organization I will mention, and I'm mentioning them. We do have them. They're a link to their website up on our webpage. But it's Blue Help.
Yeah.
And their job is to try to honor the first responders, specifically police officers that have one, killed themselves, but two, to offer solutions and to offer resources for help. There's suicide crisis hotlines. There's local counselors. There's a lot of employers have employee assistance programs where you can get help over the phone.
Yeah, and
they will refer you. You get like you talk to somebody over the phone. And I've actually used them before. You talk to them over the phone. You kind of give them a rundown of what's going on.
Yeah.
And then they'll generate you a little number, and you take it to a local psychiatrist, and they cover like the first
not only that,
certain number of sessions.
But we, and we're here in Texas, we don't have a union.
No.
But you have unions, and your union rep, they have all those things. We pay into a sort of a union type here.
Yeah, association.
Association. But you have CLEAT. I think CLEAT is nationwide.
Yeah.
Those
FOP
people can help you.
One,
yeah, those are some organizations that can straight up help you.
Yeah, and I'm sure Fire has the same type of stuff. I wouldn't be able to tell you what those are. But,
no, not at all.
But it's out there, and it's so prevalent out there.
Oh,
it's not like you could literally just like click on your phone and open up Safari or whatever you use on Androids and
Google.
The Google app or whatever, and just search.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's as simple as that. But and employee assistance programs are good. I mean, the one that I used at my last department was awesome, man. I got 8 free sessions with an actual counselor.
You have to step up. You've got to step up.
You have to make the decision.
You have to make the decision.
Nobody can
to make
force you.
The change. Yeah, no one's gonna help you except your help. No one's gonna help you except yourself in certain situations like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If your wife doesn't want to talk to your significant other, and you feel like you can't go anybody at your department,
right,
you've got to step up and get the help that you need.
Yep.
For the sake of everybody, for your family, for your own freaking sanity.
For your own sanity, for your life.
Because if not,
it may be your life.
Yeah, if you don't kill yourself, you're going to end up doing something you regret on the job, and it's going to lead to a very bad place for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that goes for anybody. That goes for everybody, not just cops. That goes for
it goes for people.
For everybody.
People that were sexually assaulted as kids,
mm-hmm.
or people that are sexually assaulted now. Someone who just got beat up and robbed.
Right.
They have stress. They have nightmares from
mm-hmm.
that junk,
mm-hmm.
man. You've got to get the help, and you got to talk about
your mass casualty incidents where you have like the Vegas shooter, and you have those people that survived that stuff like that.
The Boston bombing.
Yeah.
You've got it. You're gonna have some trauma from that. Oh yeah,
a horrific car.
Especially if you kill somebody in that car accident.
Sure. I mean, when I had a horrible on-duty car accident that, I totaled a squad car, and I ended up having injuries from that are. I guess I would know more if I had actually not tried to be a tough guy, right? And then later on, start experiencing these, horrendous back issues and neck issues and all that kind of stuff. But I tell you what, when it was time for me to go back to work, and it was time for me to get back in the squad car, I was cool driving. I was fine driving to work.
Yeah,
in my personal car, was fine.
Is when you got.
Didn't even think about it.
Yeah, is when you got in that patrol car.
But the soon as I got in that patrol car, you know how apprehensive I was to leave that bullpen and to get out there on the street. And as I'm driving, I'm just like, oh God, I was having some issues driving. Like I was scared, and it was something simple as there's as simple as a car accident, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a pretty good one, but I mean, you would think it wouldn't leave that much of an imprint, and it did, and it took, I don't know, a couple weeks or whatever before I finally kind of really got completely over it. But it was weird there for a little bit.
I bet.
But anyway, so
That's our take on the darkness.
Yeah, for those of you that have stuck with us up to this point, that's about all the
all the sick stuff we can stomach.
Yeah. But anyway, I think that's about all we got on that. So moving on into our war story segment. All right. But kind of keeping with the theme of the episode.
Yes.
Big Bo.
Oh,
yeah. Yep. What is a traumatic incident you've had, and how did you deal with it? And it can be law enforcement, it can be personal, it can be military, whatever you're comfortable talking about. Sharing with the peeps.
Traumatic experience. I don't know, man. I don't really have one for law enforcement or really military. I guess I would go personal.
I know when you go for law enforcement.
No, that really wasn't that bad. I think the most traumatic thing that I ever dealt with was probably my best friend dying when I was deployed. The worst. I think that's the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. To me,
sure.
I was deployed. It was my second deployment, and one of my good friends had died on my first deployment. That was pretty traumatic. But you're deployed, so you're in danger. You're in harm's way,
Right.
If I were to die deployed, I would be like, well, that's what happens. You die. You die in battle. People die. And I got a phone call from my cousin. She's always the bearer of bad news whenever someone dies. They're always like, oh, call Tristan, because, she's the only one I guess they feel can break the news to me. But I remember logging into my Facebook, and I still had MySpace, and
rocking the MySpace.
I was still rocking MySpace back then.
Did you have the profile music?
I don't know. I don't remember. I think I probably did. It was probably some 06 Georgia music that I was into at the time. And I got all these messages, man, from people, and they're like, don't check so-and-so's Facebook, or don't check this, or call me before you do anything.
What's the first thing you're going to do?
Call me before you do anything. So, her message was one of the first ones I saw, and I was like, all right, I'm calling. What's going on? I call her, and I just remember her telling me, and me literally throwing my computer across the room.
Yeah.
And just screaming. Like, I was like, holy crap, I couldn't believe it happened. And the worst part was flying back from Kuwait to Arizona, and just all the feelings I felt. And man, I think that really messed me up for probably almost a year.
Yeah.
Like I had, because so like that wasn't just like my best friend. Like
y'all grew up.
Yeah, he was my brother. Like we met in the 5th grade, and we were kind of cool. We ended up going to different schools in the 6th grade, and then ended up going back to school in the same school in the 7th grade, and just really, really becoming really good friends. And he lived with his grandma, I lived with my grandma, and right about the 8th grade, his grandmother passed. She had lung cancer, and my family just took him in, man. Yeah. His uncle worked all the time, and to provide for him and himself, his uncle was providing for both of them, and his dad was in and out of jail, so he just lived with me and my grandma all the time. Like, and if he wasn't at my house, I was at his house, and we were always getting into trouble and stuff. We joined the military together, everything. And when we would talk to one another, we would always envision ourselves like, man, once we get out of the military, and man, we're just gonna grow old. Like, legitimately, before I was married, that was supposed to be the person I was gonna grow old with.
Right? Like, yeah,
like
sure.
We were gonna be 2 old men kicking it on the porch, talking crap to people, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer.
Right?
Like, that was always our goal. Man, we're gonna be 40, retired, chugging beers, living next door to each other, cussing out people. Like, that was our goal. And so when he left me, he didn't leave me. He died. Yeah. But I had this huge, like, separation anxiety.
Right.
Like, I didn't want anyone to go anywhere. Like, I just felt like if you go anywhere, you're going to die.
Right, sure,
like,
yeah.
It was just tough to me, man. Like, I remember talking to my ex-wife at the time, and I was just like, she'd be like, I'm going to go to school. I'd be like, well, I'll take you to school. I'll drive you. Yeah. Because he died in a car accident, so I was just jacked, man. And I had to go see a counselor for that, because I was just like, I don't ever want anyone to go anywhere. And like, I didn't even tell my close friends any of that stuff, man. It was just real tough for me. Like, and it still is to this day sometimes. Like, it's just like, if I call someone a couple of times and they don't answer,
Right,
my brain automatically goes
yeah.
into paranoid mode.
Yeah.
So that's probably the most traumatic thing that I've dealt with and continue to deal with. And it's been...
Is this why you cuss me out when I don't?
Yes.
All right.
when I'm texting you like 4 or 5 times, I'm like, "Are you okay? What are you doing? I know you're at work and you're probably on a call, but what's wrong?"
I'm looking at my phone like, yeah, stalker. What
Yeah. Yeah, man. I do that. I do it to my girl too. She'll be like, "I'm fine." You know what I mean? And so, it's been 11 years, 12 years since he's been gone, and I still deal with it every day, man. It's one of the most traumatic things that happened to me.
Yeah, and you will for the rest of your life.
Like my mom, I knew, like, you know, with her lifestyle, she wasn't long for this world. My grandmother, when she passed, I knew she was in her 80s, you know, it was going to happen. But he was so sudden.
Sure.
You know, I literally had just talked to him on the phone a week prior because I sent him like $500 for Valentine's Day. He was like, "Dude, let me borrow $500. I'm trying to take my girl out."
Yeah.
And he was like, "I'll pay you back." I was like, "Don't worry about it. Here, take your girl somewhere special, do something, blah, blah, blah." And I still have the email. And he was just like, "Thanks for the email. Love me." And I was just like, "Oh, of course. I'll always love you." And so then, like, you know, not even 7 days later, it was like, boom.
Yeah.
So that was real tough for me.
I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Your turn.
All right. So.
And I don't tell everybody these stories either, so...
No, he just opened up a door.
Our 10 podcast listeners should feel lucky.
Yeah, very lucky.
Very lucky.
So now you're obligated to tell people about the podcast.
Yeah.
Or at least create fake accounts and then subscribe.
Oh, all day
Appreciate
long.
that. So, actually, in putting the show notes for this together, I had to really think about, like, which one, right? And I hate that I have a... option. I sometimes I hate that I have an option list, right? But this one is law enforcement related, and it was the first time I saw Big Bo without a shirt. No, I'm serious. So, all right, so I'm in my patrol car, working night shift, and this was 2011. No, not 2011. I don't remember. It was 6-7 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe longer. Some of the stuff gets fuzzy after time goes by. But so I'm sitting in my patrol car and I'm screwing around on my phone, and I look up and there's a young female standing probably 20 feet from my window, just staring at me. Just blank stare, but her face was like pure terror. Like, I mean, just, it was like, I kind of equate it to, if, I don't even know, if you're watching a horror movie and you just, that pure look of ghastly terror, you know, that gets on people's faces.
Yeah.
It's like that. And she had tears running down her cheeks, but she wasn't really making a lot of noise or whatever. So I get out of the car, and it's in a kind of a dark parking lot, you know. So like I get out of the car, I can see her, I just don't see all the details yet.
Yeah.
So I get out of the car and I'm asking her if she's okay, but she's not really responding. And I take my flashlight out and kind of light her up a little bit, and that's when I see the blood running down her thighs, down her inner part of her calves, and down to her feet. So, where I was at the time, there was a female bus driver, and so I kind of walked this girl over to where the bus was, and she really wouldn't talk to me too much. And I remember putting my hands on her shoulder to kind of help guide her, and she like jerked off of my hand. So I was like, "Oh God, okay." And I don't think I really understood. I think I knew what had happened, but I kind of didn't really understand it. So I get this female to start talking to her, and she opens up to her, and while I was sitting in the parking lot messing around on my phone, she, between the parking lot where I was and a field on the other side of the parking lot was a building where buses came in and out of, right? And in that field, it was completely dark. There's no lights over there or anything. Well, while I was sitting there on my phone, she was walking in that field to go to the bus stop to catch her bus. And she was attacked from behind at knife point and sodomized by somebody who she never saw.
Dang. In
the field, he shoved her face down in the dirt, told her not to make a noise. He raped her. And sodomized her and caused enough damage to where she was bleeding. And I remember the look on her face was like imprinted in my brain. And the fact that it had just happened while I was sitting there and I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything, I was there.
Man.
And I got really angry with myself, like really angry with myself. Like I was like, I failed this girl, you know, I had all these thoughts running through my head, you know, and the fact that something like that could happen to her. She's 14 years old. She was out late. She was not supposed to be out late with her friends. She was trying to get to her bus so she could get home, hopefully before her mom got home.
Gosh.
So I remember calling the mom. And the mom showed up, and that was one of the worst sounds I think I've ever heard, was when her mom heard what actually happened, and the wail that came out of her,
shriek,
because the same thing had happened to her.
Oh, man.
When she was a teenager. So now that this had happened to her daughter under similar circumstances, she just, when she lost it, like that sound, just that cry, that wail that she made, that sound that she made, it just imprinted in my head. And for a long time, well, that day, when I got off work, at the time I was married to my ex-wife, and we had a daughter, and we have a daughter, and I went into my daughter's room, and I just bawled. And I didn't want to leave the room.
I bet, man. I can only imagine.
And I actually ended up sleeping on the floor. But for a long time after that, every time I closed my eyes to go to sleep, all I could see was the girl's face staring at me like a ghost through a window.
Man.
And all I could hear was her mom. So, and this would come in dreams, you know? And I just started feeling guilty. I felt so guilty, like I could have prevented it, or I could have done something about it. And the fact of the matter is, you know, I came to learn over time and through communication.
Yeah.
I came to learn that I could have been anywhere. It didn't matter. I could have been, that was going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if I was on the other side of the bus station, that maybe she wouldn't have been a target, but when I left, somebody else would have been.
Yeah.
So, you know, it took a long time to resolve myself to that it wasn't my fault that happened.
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
You can't be everywhere at once. You can't save everyone. You can't do it.
No, that's how we feel at our job.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to rationalize sometimes when you're part of your job is to help people and to save people, right?
Yeah.
And here was this innocent person, this innocent girl, and this had happened to her, and she suffered way more than I ever could imagine, you know. But it was just the kind of the aftermath of that tore me up, you know, and it really tore me up. Like it really did. And it was, you know, it was in its very definition, you know, PTSD or whatever. But it took years, and it took talking about it and all that kind of stuff to kind of process through it. And I still, like, to this day, like I've had dreams about it, but and stuff like that. Then when I hear stuff about stories like that, even like when I'm watching a TV show or a movie and there's like simulated rape, you know, I have a hard time watching it.
I bet.
So, you know, it's just kind of one of those things. But you know.
So that's our war stories.
That's mine.
That's enough of that.
When it comes to war stories, we would love to hear your war stories. So if you would please, if you're so inclined, regardless of what facet in life you're at, you can send your war stories to streetwarriorradio.com/contact and or info@streetwarriorradio, and we would love to share those on the podcast.
We'd love it.
Love it.
Love it.
So we're starting a new segment.
Yeah. This is current events.
Current events.
We're going to do some current events.
It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. So, this is not a joke. Did you hear about the assistant chief in Kentucky?
Yes.
Okay, so there was an assistant police chief in Kentucky who decided that he was going to tell his new recruit, who had asked him a question. This new recruit, new guy, asked his assistant police chief.
That he doesn't really know.
Yeah. First of all, on Facebook Messenger. And he says,
of all things.
Yeah. Hey, assistant police chief, if we find kids smoking behind the school building, what do we do? And the assistant police chief decides.
Here comes the answer.
The assistant police chief decides if they're black or the N-word, shoot them. No questions asked. Just shoot them.
Why?
The kid tries to clarify it like he's joking. He was like, no, but seriously, what do we do? He's like, no, I'm serious. If they're black, who cares? No one's going to shed a tear. Just shoot them. And this is my thing. With everything that's going on in today's society, why would you say stuff like this? And this is even funnier. He used to be an ex-LAPD officer.
Oh, God. I didn't know that part of it.
Yeah, he used to be an ex-LAPD officer in the Rampart Division.
No, like the actual...
Yes. So,
which, of course, people that don't know about that was...
They handled the OJ case.
Well, one of them did.
My friend Mark. Fuhrman. So, I mean...
No, that's...
When I first heard this story, I was like...
And we laugh not because we agree with it or think it's funny. It's actually not funny.
It's actually not funny.
But it's so ridiculous that it's funny.
First of all, what is wrong with you as a human being that you actually care what color they are and that you want to shoot them regardless of what color they are? They're literally smoking a joint behind school.
So let's execute people for that.
Let's execute people for that.
But specifically, black people.
But yes, blacks only. If they're white, I guess we can handcuff them.
Chief? Maybe they just get a beating?
Maybe.
There was no clarification
on that. A
shellacking, yeah.
What is wrong with you? This is the type of stuff that's super negative and that people look at and they're like, all cops are like that. Yeah, and we have no room in our profession for people like that.
No, not at all.
It's stupid.
Not at all. It's those people are a cancer on the law enforcement profession.
Yeah,
they're the aides of law enforcement.
Yeah.
And they're out there. They're out there. I'm not even going to pretend they're not. They're out there, both black, white, Hispanic.
But this new recruit did a good thing.
He did a good thing.
Turned him in.
Yep.
Hey, we don't need this.
Nope. Don't need it. And he did the right thing. He stepped up.
Yeah, he stepped up.
Probably with a great. Actually, probably it took a lot of courage for him to do that.
Yeah, that's
in his
your
position.
Supervisor. You're brand new.
Yeah, and good on him for doing that. Man, what? First of all, if you're a human being in 2018
and you still got race hang-up issues,
you've still got race hang-up issues, but you have seen the news in the last 5 years just one time. Why? And you're wearing a badge for a living. Why in the world? Why in the world would you even verbalize that crap in a manner where stuff can be saved? I mean, you're talking about, first of all, an intelligence issue.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And a hatred issue.
Yeah.
But you just setting himself up for just horribleness. But it's good that he did. Because a lot of those guys are dumb, and he got turned in. And
if you still have race hang-up issues in 2018, you're stupid. So
yeah, you got issues.
You got issues. You need to go seek counseling, my friend.
I mean, it's just... It's silly.
But
with that, I'll give you another side of the ridiculousness. So...
the opposite side of the ridiculousness.
Did you hear about the NYPD sergeant that rescued a woman, an elderly black female, by the way, because we're not all racist.
I just read the show notes. I just read the end of this joke.
This gets insane.
Go ahead.
Who rescues a woman from a burning building, right?
Uh-huh.
And now he's under IA.
IA is an internal affairs investigation.
Because of a complaint filed by the granddaughter.
Of the grandma that was saved? What did the complaint say?
So, this building was completely, it was going up, right? This sergeant marches up the stairs, goes to the apartment. They're clearing everybody out, apartment by apartment. He gets up to her floor. It's like the 12th floor or something like that. And goes inside and notices that the apartment is filling up with smoke.
Yeah.
According to the sergeant, the granddaughter says, who's there on scene, says, please help something to the effect of, please help me get my grandmother out of here. Save her life. She's going to die. The granddaughter says that she said to leave her grandmother alone. It's a fireproof apartment.
There's no such thing.
That's what her complaint's based on. So,
and then
it goes a little further. Okay. So, he picks her up, carries her downstairs. At some point during this, he collapses because he's been hauling people out of this building. I mean, he's
breathing in smoke.
Yeah, I mean, there was some words said about the fire department because I guess the fire department was or according to the reports on the scene, obviously we weren't there. That the fire department, a lot of the firefighters were not going into the building
because it burned down.
Because it was burning. But the cops were running in and out, pulling people out.
Because that's our job. Because we're stupid.
So, at some point, I think he drops her.
Oh.
Because he collapses.
Yeah.
His partners get him out, and he's like, "No, she's still in there."
Get the grandma.
And he runs back in and gets her.
This dude's a badass.
He's a badass. Well, she ends up dying.
No, from the drop?
Not from the drop. From smoke inhalation.
Okay. With the fireproof apartment.
In the fireproof apartment.
It was not smoke-proof, though.
Apparently not.
No.
So, she died because of the smoke inhalation, which is said to have been accusation that has been caused because she was removed from the apartment that the granddaughter is claiming that she shouldn't have been removed from because it was fireproof. But in that,
did the granddaughter stay in the fireproof apartment?
No, she got out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But an internal affairs complaint was filed, and that dude is being investigated for trying to save somebody's life anyway.
And this is the silly stuff that we go through.
This is real. This is.
Well, it's just like towards the end of my career in the military, male soldiers were afraid to save female soldiers because there had been complaints that male soldiers were fondling them while they were putting bandages on or trying to save them. Like, oh, he cut my bra and t-shirt open in the battlefield. Well, you had a gunshot wound. And so they were like, medics are like, I'm not touching that. I'm not doing nothing with that.
Yeah. Might save her, but my whole life is going to be over.
My whole life is ruined. Man, look, in this job, you're going to get IA investigations. You're going to get in trouble, so if you're doing what's right and you can sleep at night, forget the haters.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
I agree.
I'm going to get me one of them fireproof apartments, though.
No shit. I want a fireproof apartment.
All right.
That's pretty badass.
So get to know us.
So, all right. We've had enough of the...
What are your favorite...
I'm beat down from all this.
What are your favorite hobbies?
Oh, God. The G-rated ones or the X-rated ones?
G-rated.
All right. So...
No X-rated.
I love basketball.
Yeah.
My sport, man. Hobbies, spending time with family is not a hobby, but I love watching movies. I love film.
You were on a grill kick there for a while.
I love to grill. Grilling's awesome.
Look at you, your eyes lit up. You guys
seriously,
can't see it, but his eyes just lit up.
I love to grill.
He loves him.
I really do. I really do love to grill.
It's because he's fat.
Well, that's not why, Big Bo. But okay, that's why we're all right. So, So I do love food,
Yes.
but I love grilled food, and I love it's fun, man. It's fun.
I didn't even know there was championships in grilling.
Apparently there are. I'm not that into it. I just enjoy doing it.
Well,
outside.
maybe you should be that into it.
I'm not that good, but
Trust me.
but you know, I actually enjoy just like standing out there and with a beer or whatever, and just grilling. I mean, it's just relaxing for me, I think. Getting to the range, shooting. That's a hobby of mine. A hobby that translates to life, right? I love writing. I love. I've gotten really into this, or gotten back into the production side of things, and
that's a hobby.
Yeah, to some. So I don't know. That's pretty much it, man. I like traveling. I haven't gotten to travel in a long, long time. That's fun.
Yeah. I'm going to Chicago next month.
Yeah, good luck.
I'm going to the good side of Chicago.
Oh.
I've looked into this.
There's a good side.
No, yeah, there's a good side. Don't do that to that city. Don't do that. My hobbies involve video games. I love me a good old PlayStation game.
Oh, yeah.
And movies. Video games and movies.
Movies are fun.
Those are my two hobbies.
Yeah.
I also love the basketball.
The basketball? Yeah.
That would be the sport I would follow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're on the same accord there.
Yeah.
I love me a good video game and movies.
Yeah.
Not much of a griller. I used to be. I used to be able to get down on the grill.
It. I don't know what
I just
it is
haven't
about
had a grill that I could really like call my own in a long time.
I got a nice grill.
You do have a nice grill. I was gonna steal it one time.
It needs some propane though. I'm out of propane.
Okay. So
Q&A.
This one comes from Vela, and he asks, with the growth of social media and the growth of hatred towards police, how does an officer feel knowing they will possibly be recorded on someone's phone? It seems as if people are waiting for you to mess up and can't wait to post it on their social media. Have you ever been recorded? What actions do you take?
Easy.
Go ahead. Have you ever been recorded?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm recorded every time I get out of the car and interact with somebody. Because for some reason, people still fail to realize that 99.9% of police departments are equipped with dash cameras and soon-to-be body cameras. And,
federal law.
We're recording constantly.
But has someone ever pointed a phone in your face or a camera in your face? What did you do?
Absolutely nothing. There's nothing you can do. If you're in a public place, people can record all day long. Where it becomes a problem, and where a lot of these cop block dudes like to make it a problem, is when they start interfering with whatever it is that you're doing. So,
it becomes a safety hazard.
It becomes a safety hazard, and by interfering with whatever it is you're doing, it is a safety hazard in my opinion. But when you've put yourself in a position to where you are now the officers that are whatever that is they're doing, they're having to take their attention off of that, which, whether you want to believe it or not, creates an air of danger for everyone
involved,
because they're having to take their attention off of the task at hand and focus on you now because they don't know what you're doing.
Mm-mm.
Yes, obviously you're holding up a phone, but that may not be your only intention. And whether people want to realize this or not, we live in an era, right, where people want to kill us. Well, people have always wanted to kill cops, but
now it's like people always hated us and wanted to whoop
there's
a
a
cop's
real
ass.
There's a
but
real
now
threat
it's
of
like I'm gonna go straight up I'm gonna go ambush a cop and kill him.
Yeah, and it's a real problem.
Yeah, for sure.
So, for all I know, if you're standing there with a phone and you keep mouthing or getting closer or whatever, I'm going to tell you to get back. I'm going to tell you to keep your distance. Where you do have cops that make mistakes is when they tell people they can't record. If you're in a public place, you can record all day long. You take pictures of whatever you want. Now, it can be what you do with those pictures or whatever afterwards that can become a problem, right?
For sure.
But on scene, that's not your issue. As a cop, record me. I don't care. I'm already recording everything. You want to also get some piece of the video action.
Yeah, I've had people tell me that too. You're being recorded. I'm like, I know. I have a body camera.
Doing that right now.
Yeah,
thanks.
The one time I was being recorded and I just thought it was hilarious. I was working at the college and I was doing a traffic stop, and it's college, so the cops are doing something wrong. So these cats came out and they start recording the traffic stop and they start walking into the street.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, you guys need to stop. And they're like, we're recording you. We're allowed to record you. I'm like, you're absolutely right. You're allowed to record me, but you're also standing in the middle of the street.
You're now obstructing a roadway, which is a crime.
I said, if you'd like to record me, you can stand on the sidewalk or you can stand in the parking lot. I don't care if you record me or not. And they were just like, whatever. And they just walked away.
Because you didn't fall into the deal.
Yeah. Like, what are you doing? I was being recorded already.
Right. And that's kind of the thing, is not falling into it.
Yeah.
So what if they want to record you?
Yeah.
You should already be recording yourself. So what are you worried about?
Yeah.
If you're out there doing stuff you're not supposed to be, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
you're worried about people find out what you're doing, right?
Yep. What I want someone to record me, and then I want to subpoena their phone.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the fun part.
Yeah.
If you got a bunch of people, if you got a bunch of people standing around, they got their phones out and they're recording. Guess what?
That's evidence.
Phone's mine now.
That's
because
evidence.
You've now recorded evidence to a crime.
I'm gonna need your name because this may be subpoenaed.
Yep, need your information.
Yep. I'll delete it. It's a phone. Nothing ever gets deleted.
Yeah,
Ask Tom Brady.
You've now recorded evidence.
Yep.
And you're deleting such evidence.
Aaron Hernandez. He thought he had deleted stuff.
He did. He did. All right. So
well, I hope that answers your question, Vela.
If it doesn't, if you need more clarification, just let us know. But
on our social media.
Oh, and Big Bo, you gonna tell people how to make that happen?
Yes. So social media, website, streetwarriorradio.com. That is the best way to get to us if you have questions. We want to hear your war stories. We want to hear your questions. We want to know if you hate the podcast. Send us this stuff at streetwarriorradio.com, where you can also use your Amazon click-through. All right? Amazon. All right. So there's Instagram, Street Warrior Radio. That's how we can be reached on Instagram, Facebook, Street Warrior Radio, Twitter, JC.
Is Street Warrior Radio spelled STRT? The word warrior. Radio is spelled RDIO.
Boom. That's how you can hit us up. Don't forget, we got the YouTube page. Pinterest. We don't have Pinterest?
There's no Pinterest.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty positive.
We're on Pinterest. Street Warrior Radio on Pinterest. Look us up. If you can't find us on Pinterest, go to the Instagram. Start following us on there. I'm sure there's a link to our Pinterest.
You know what? If we don't have a Pinterest, create one.
You want the Pinterest?
You want the Pinterest? Just make one.
Take it.
Just take it.
Take it. This name is LLC. We'll get it.
Sue you.
We'll sue you. But yeah, man, that's the best way to support us, man. Support us by listening, by subscribing, by liking, by sharing. I want to thank the people who donated these awesome freaking mics to us, man. It was a super surprise, and it was, it came to the PO box.
And it is important to note that they reached out to us.
Yeah, they reached out to us.
We didn't ask for anything.
We didn't prostitute ourselves. Top Notch Tactics Security Services out of Rowlett, Texas, man. Those guys, they are all your security needs. They're about to set up their website. They're about to be up and running, and once they get their website up, we're going to put a link on our website for them.
Absolutely.
100%. We're supporting them. They are also law enforcement and veteran owned. So anything like that. I also want to give a shout out to GMC, Grown Man Company. He's out there doing some good things. He's possibly going to be a guest on our...
gotta get him on the podcast.
Yeah, he's going to be a guest on the podcast here soon. He's doing a clothing line, and the proceeds are going to benefit homeless veterans. So give them a follow at Grown Man Company. We'll put a link to our Instagram on that, and we'll shout them out on Twitter and all of our social medias. But like us and all that stuff. So I'm out. Salute.
So with that, make sure if you listen to us, you subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, all that. Make sure you rate us. iHeartRadio. Leave a review. It helps us. It helps the podcast. And on top of all that fun stuff, I'd like to say thank you to all the men and women in uniform out there, the heroes of the armed services that are out there fighting every day for our freedoms. We appreciate you guys more than anything. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Words cannot do enough to thank you for what it is that you do. To our brothers and sisters in blue, the thin blue line, law enforcement, and our other first responders, fire service, and paramedics, we love you guys. You guys are our family. Be safe. Continue to protect our communities and doing the right thing by upholding your oath. And to the families of all of our military personnel and all of our first responders, you guys also receive our gratitude because you guys also make incredible sacrifices. And to the men and women out there just in that daily grind, working hard, staying in the grind, staying in the fight, making the world go round, thank you so much for what you do. You make it all worth fighting for. We thank you to all of our listeners, our subscribers, our supporters. You guys are great. We love you. And with that, Street Warrior Radio is out of service.